Our conversation with Jolyn Armstrong with Grapevine Inner Wellness went so well that we split it into 2 parts. Get ready for part 2. You're a coach, which is different from a counselor. So that might be something people are confused about. So can you explain what the differences are and why you chose what you chose?
Yeah, it was, I did not choose coaching as a modality lightly because I have some of the same kind of worries about the coaching world as many people do. There's not as much oversight in the coaching world as there is for therapists, for example, right? They have a board that they need to answer to, and there are some standardized rules that they follow, and so there's some safety there, and that doesn't exist in the coaching world. But there are also some restrictions that therapists have that really would limit my ability to do what I do in my practice. One thing is, like you mentioned in the introduction, I work with families who have loved ones in prison, right? And if I chose to be a therapist, I could work with those people in the state that I'm licensed in and no one else, right? And yet there are people all over this country who are really struggling with having a loved one who's incarcerated and the potential trauma, and at the very least, the emotional difficulties with having a loved one who's incarcerated, who has committed a crime, right? And so I wanted to be able to work with people no matter where I was, no matter where they are. The same holds true with people coming out of cults. I work with a group that's based in the UK to help people who have been in cults before, in coercive situations, or people who have a loved one who's currently in a really coercive organization or relationship, to help them deal with that and maintain the relationship and maintain their lives, right? And so I did not want the physical state limitation there. So that's one just really practical reason. But the other reason too, that's probably a bigger reason, is I really believe that trauma and grief, even anxiety and depression that go along with that can be a result of trauma and grief. But trauma and grief are more injuries to our nervous system. Those aren't mental illnesses. And, I never received any training to diagnose mental illnesses. I don't need that. That's not what my specialty is. And I love that therapists are able to diagnose those things and treat true mental illnesses. But if I can focus specifically on those things that have caused an injury to our nervous system, that's where I focus. And I don't need the licensure in order to do that.
Yeah, that's a great explanation. I really appreciate that. And that makes a lot of sense, because a mental illness or, some different attachment styles, I've learned some stuff about that, or personality disorders, that kind of thing. You don't have to deal with any of that when you're dealing with trauma, grief, anxiety, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And I've worked hand in hand with therapists. I have some clients who see a therapist for various different reasons, but I'm able to help them gain control of their nervous system so that they can, in a deeper way, work with their therapist on whatever it is that they're working with their therapist on. And I love those relationships for sure. So those therapists who are happy to, offload that part of helping their clients so that they can focus more on, dealing with mental illness. Fantastic. So,
So let's dive into your specialties a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's start with the one with the cult or coercive control. What is the line? I know I've read in by the way, Jolyn has this great book. So there's some information about this in this wonderful book of hers right here. So we'll go into that a little bit more later. But coercive control or a cult, what is the difference between that and just a situation where maybe there's rules and you think it's too many rules?
Yeah. Yeah. Because there is kind of what I look at like a spectrum, right? And I think, again, many things get labeled as a cult that probably aren't a cult, right? And so I look at a couple of things. I like to use the BITE model to identify, a cult behavior or cult control. The BITE model has measures in 4 different areas. So does this group or person completely control your behavior? Do they control your access to information? Do they control what thoughts you're able to have, right, or express? And do they control your emotions? And so that's kind of like the 10,000 foot view of the BITE model, where, what kinds of things are they controlling? But then we take it a step further and look at, a football team will control a lot of those things. Football players are required to dress a certain way. They're required to behave a certain way, all those kinds of things. But is that a cult? Right? And so my next step is to look at, okay, is this organization or religion or group that you're in or person that you're with, are they, helpful to you? Are they harmful, or are they neutral? Right? And if you're on an NFL team, some of that control is really beneficial, right? And maybe is mostly helpful for what you're doing and for the time that you're there. But if you're in a group that you can't, your every day is planned out for you, and there's severe punishment if you go astray or if you look at information that you're not supposed to look at, we might start taking a little deeper dive into, okay, is this helping you? How is this helping you? Right? Or is this harmful? So, yeah.
And coercive control, of course, can happen in all kinds of relationships too, which it's outside the cult, but like, and I have just so much experience watching people going into something where I'm like, this is a horrible. I mean, at some point, and it's some friends of mine, like even in recent years, where I'm like, yep. And then
I saw that coming. Yeah.
I saw that coming, but you can't really say anything. But then the next thing that happens is she's been hit or raped, and then she's maybe suicidal. And I'm not talking about people that are strangers. I'm talking about my people, so I feel like there's a lot of situations that are very serious where it could be a romantic relationship or whatever. So explain, do you deal with, work with people, do you work with people that are in that kind of situation? And is there an analogy there to people who are in a cult or not so much?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things that are coming to mind as you're talking about this. One that I think isn't said enough in our society is that this kind of control, like falling prey to that, has zero to do with your intelligence level. Right? There are very intelligent people that are manipulative, whatever that word is, right? Able to be manipulated.
I honestly feel like it's all of us. I feel like we all are capable of being manipulated. Because I think I've been around some really excellent manipulators. So I'm like, wow.
Yeah. Well, I like to use this analogy for those listening who may have ever gone to Vegas has a lot of these shows where there's what are they called, where they put people under a little bit? Come on, what's the mind control?
Oh yeah, oh my gosh.
I know, I'm losing track of what that is to come up with. All right, it's going to come to me.
Erica? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
Hypnosis, right?
Okay, so here's the analogy. Yeah, here's the analogy that I like to use for those who have been to a hypnotist show, like Vegas has those shows, right, all over the place. Yeah, if you've been to a hypnotist, you'll see they might pull like a dozen people up on stage and they start to try to hypnotize them. And there might be, I don't know, maybe 2 people that they send back away. And they say, okay, you can't be part of this. Well, those 2 people, they couldn't hypnotize. That's probably a good average number of people in our society that maybe won't fall prey to some kind of manipulation, right? And it's not very many. It's not a big chunk of our society. The rest of us, guess what? We may be manipulated at some point or another with, a coercive person. And, you could be manipulated in a good way. Like I convince people to take better control of their lives, to change their behavior in a way that's beneficial to them, but it's not harmful, right? So it's actually not any kind of culty behavior. It's, hey, I want to help you to make some changes in your life.
Yeah.
So there's some influence without negative impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is an interesting area to me because there's a lot that could be said, like, like kind of the bite model you said, like the behavior, information, what's the T? Thought and emotion.
Mhm.
So, that can, sales organizations use all of that. I mean, if you're working at pretty much anywhere, they'll tell you what this is the dress code. This is what, don't say these things, you'll get fired. So there is some of that, but then that's a job and then you leave and they're trying to control your off hours, then that would be something they can't do. Yeah, so this would be, an iffy thing. And then of course, parents, are in control of their children. And as they get older, there's a little bit less and less and less. So then if you're 29-year-old, you're telling them how to dress and how to, where to do, where to be, how to do it. That's manipulative, right? But like if you're having those conversations with a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old, then it's like, so that there is that spectrum of this is, and I also think there's a lot more of it in our society. I've seen a lot more as the abuse of choice, because it's very easy to, send someone to prison for physical assault or rape or these kind of things, because it's a very concrete thing, but it's not concrete if you're being psychologically abused. There's almost no way to regulate it, and laws don't know how to manage it. So it's just kind of this wide open pit that it's pretty easy for people to fall into. So
yeah, it's crazy. A good case study of this, I watched this documentary recently, Bad Vegan. I don't know if you've ever heard of that documentary, but this woman was a really successful restaurateur in New York, and had this super popular vegan restaurant. It was amazing. Like it was the place to be, and it was making tons of cash. And she fell prey, this woman, to a person that this was a terrible, terrible situation. He convinced her to borrow money, like tons and tons of money from different entities, and give it all to him. And it destroyed her. Now I can't remember if she wound up in prison. She may have. Like, it's a fantastic documentary, but about exactly what we're talking about, right? And so, but I think you made a really good point that with the bite model, with all of these things, there is every element of that, there's a spectrum. And I think the more important thing is, what is the intent behind it? Is this level of control appropriate for the situation, for your age, for all of it? And what is the intended outcome? Is it helpful? Is it harmful? Or is it neutral? And so that part, weighing all of it, it's very, very nuanced. It's more nuanced in my mind, and I'm very careful in looking at all of those elements together.
right.
Than a lot of people in our society. Oh, that's a cult. I belong to a cult.
Well, and I love that you're so in tune with that, because that's you are a person that would be a good barometer for just parsing it out without jumping to a conclusion one way or the other.
Yeah.
Question for you on intelligence. Do you think I know you said it doesn't depend on intelligence, when you can be manipulated. Do you think intelligent people are easier to manipulate because they expect their intelligence to protect them, or about the same? Or why do you think intelligence isn't a factor? Why do super intelligent people get manipulated so easily sometimes?
Yeah, I actually am not sure that they are more or less. I haven't seen personally, maybe there are studies out there that take that into account and study that individually. What I personally have seen is a good mix of very intelligent people and normies like me being manipulated, right? So I just don't know what impact intelligence actually has. What I do know, and the reason I bring intelligence up is because people aren't stupid just because they were manipulated. And sometimes even very intelligent people are like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. Am I that stupid? That's a common question I get asked. And I say that has zero to do with it. Absolutely. So what I have found is people, some common personality traits, people who are driven wind up being targeted by people that like to manipulate. I think that they serve a purpose for some of these coercive people. People who want to do kindnesses in the world, who are just givers, who are, I want the world to be a better place. That trait is often targeted for the use of coercive people. Yeah. So, it's things like that. And maybe intelligence falls in that. Oh yeah, I can use this, this person with this degree or this higher intelligence to my benefit. And so I'll manipulate them. Maybe that's, another thing too. But.
Yeah. And I think that's one of those things where we can talk about shame. Everyone, once they're realizing that they've been manipulated, I think feels a sense of shame. Yeah. But the reality is you were manipulated because of your positive traits. Mm-hmm. And being manipulated, that shame falls on the manipulator. I mean, whenever and I hate this so much, whenever you fall a victim to something or that's not your shame. You shouldn't feel, and everyone feels that shame. They hold that shame so tight, which is lots of reasons why, I wouldn't go seek help or someone else doesn't seek help and look for help because we feel too much shame about, I can't believe I did that, or I can't believe I fell for that. But that shame belongs to the person who's doing it.
And yet they will harness your shame as their victim. They'll use that as a tool against you as well. They know that that's going to be there, which is another, it's just, If we could do away with the manipulators in our world, it would be wonderful. And yeah.
And the level, it seems like it just keeps to be more and more. And this is listen, I could talk about this for about 15 hours, but I get tired of it after a while, me first. But I would go back to how I feel like we can all be manipulated. I'm going to give a really silly, it's not silly, but this example made me really angry. And it's something I just realized this year because I've always had an interest in physical health because my health crashed when I was very, very young. So I've had to. So one of the things that has bothered me, I'm going to say canola oil. So I always thought that was a good thing, right? And we're supposed to, and back, in the day, you do not eat butter, you eat canola oil. Well, now it's just coming out, I guess, and this has been going on since World War II. It's Canada engine oil.
Yeah.
And you find organic Exceller pressed canola oil. So this is where I go, all of us are, because we were told that this is good. And it really was just they're trying to find a way to make money on their engine lubricant now that they didn't have to use it in the world wars. And it's like, we're about 100 years past that. Yeah. And we're still seeing Expeller pressed organic canola oil on the backs of organic products. Yeah. This is, to me, where I feel like it's so widespread. There's so much things that are deceptive that
our food industry especially, it's like, why did you lie to us? Why did you do that? And we all fell for it. We all did, because why wouldn't we?
Yeah, because you just believe. So I think one thing that's helped me to think through is that if you are trusting other people, it's because you're trustworthy. So usually we put onto the world what we are. Yeah. So if we're, and that's the big thing, if we're trusting of people, it's because we're trustworthy. We know that we wouldn't hurt someone, so we don't believe someone else would do it.
Right. So. Exactly. And I do think, and I love this little shift that you're making here just in our conversation, because we're never going to get rid of the people and organizations in our world that are going to manipulate us. There will always be those people, entities, organizations out there, and they're going to use every good quality we have against us, right? And so just speaking to that shame that we feel when we realize we've been manipulated, I think each of us can just show some added grace to each other when we discover something like that a loved one is going through. I just had a conversation with a woman this morning who's being manipulated by somebody that she's been talking to for about 3 months, an individual. And I'm just, oh my goodness, you poor thing. Like, yeah, you've been manipulated because of all of the good qualities about you. And just loving on each other and helping to alleviate that shame and build each other up after an experience like that is so important. And so just know that if you know anyone who's listening, if you know anyone who's been in a coercive experience like that, call them, check on them, love on them, build them up, because they need it.
And sometimes you just have to hang out with them while they're with their person that you'd rather slap upside the head. I only know this from way too much experience. And go, well, I've lived through it, and I'm going to love you now, and I'm going to love you when you figure it out. And you actually can't tell them. They won't actually hear it when they don't hear it.
No.
And maybe there's little hints you can drop, but usually they have to get to the point where they're like, I didn't like being slapped, and I'm really ashamed that happened to me, and I got myself into that, or whatever the situation is, right? Yeah. And thank you for still hanging out and being my friend.
Yeah.
Usually,
Mary, I'll tell you, my work with those who are in relationships like that almost always focuses on just building up their self-love, not convincing them of anything to do with the other person. But I remain focused on how are you doing? And hey, by the way, whatever mean things you've heard about yourself are not true. And I know that, right? So just continuing to love on them, building them up. The goal is for us to build them up more than that person tears them down, right?
Absolutely.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, just saying things like, relationships are a two-way street. It's not a one-way street. Yeah. So whatever you're giving out, you should be getting back. And unless it's your little baby or something like that, but in a, or there might be times, like in a marriage, someone gets a brain injury, there's times, but there should be, to the extent that people can do it, a give and take. And it's not just all one person just giving for the other person's benefit. If it is that's, it's not a good situation. It's coercive. Maybe it probably is coercive. So
exactly.
Yeah. Thanks. That's a good conversation about that.
Yeah.
All right. Your second kind of thing that you focus on is families who have people who are incarcerated. So I would say that is like how would you describe that in terms of like the emotion? Is it like a shame by association, a shock? Like, what is the emotions you go through when that happens?
I would say there are tons of conflicting emotions with this, right? And it's different depending on who the person is. So parents feel the impact of a child's incarceration very differently than a sibling would, or a friend or a spouse. And so it is really different. But what I can tell you, the folks that come to me very often are very surprised that their loved one could even possibly be capable of doing something, the thing they're charged with, right? Yeah. And they are wondering, I deal with a lot of parents. It's primarily mothers or wives, right? So a mother, like, oh my gosh, I taught him to tie his shoes, and here, like, he went out and did this thing. What in the world is this, right? And so understanding that this person that you love may also be a person that, needed to be stopped, and you didn't know it, right? So there's all of that, like this really mind shift. Let's talk about, elements that are that are present in trauma, right? Like, hold up, my whole identity, my position in the world, I'm now the mother of someone in prison. Are you kidding me? Right? So all of those things. And the other thing that I just want to point out too with this population is very often families are treated by society as if they were the ones that committed the crime, right? And so that's always a worry. That's something that stands out to me now more than ever, earlier in my adulthood and my childhood. When you see like news stories about a crime happening, pay attention to where the news crews go, right? It's typically to the family's house, even though the person that committed the crime maybe doesn't even live there, their families live there, right? And they certainly aren't there now. They're either, in jail or in a hospital before going to jail, right?
Yeah.
News crews go to the families' homes. And so there is definitely maybe an ostracization of, by society that is unwarranted and kind of unfair with a lot of families. So it's not a given that they knew and that they were a part of it. I'll just have that be said.
So because this is such a unique, thing that you're good at helping people with, that I think, most people wouldn't be able to necessarily be helpful. So what are some of the things that you tell people that are dealing with that? What is some practical wisdom?
Yeah. So one thing that I think is super important that I find myself repeating with these families is this is a marathon, not a sprint. So we're putting one foot in front of the other because very often these things span for years and sometimes decades. And so we're not looking at how am I going to get through the rest of my loved one's life or my life. We're going to look at how am I getting through today? And tomorrow, like, let's just look at that. How am I going to get through this week? And another thing that I think is really important to be said here too is one thing that shocked me when I learned this statistic is that fully half of the US population has currently or has had a loved one who's incarcerated. Meaning the people that I work with, you're not alone. You are not, it feels unbelievably isolating. Like, oh my gosh, I don't fit in society anymore. And yet half of our society has experienced something like this. I was really shocked because it does, the people who are experiencing this think they're the only ones. Always, almost always. Like, oh no.
Well, and also there's the people that have family members that should have gone to prison that never did. So what
There's
yeah, but there's also this person who definitely should have gone to prison for everyone's safety, but never did. So never got charged, no one never told, whatever. Yeah. So it's unfortunate that there is there's just a lot of violence in society, and a lot of avenues to go south, a lot of avenues to really just get it messed up, unfortunately.
Well, when I look at it, we'll talk about a reframe. I look a big, giant portion of our society is spending all day, every day, just right on the edge of fight or flight, right? Like they're so worked up in their nervous system. Yeah, violence is the next step. And so my goal is always, can we just like bring the temperature down a little bit just for our own selves, right? Globally in our the whole world, but even just in our society here, we can bring violence down if we could all just regulate our nervous system a little bit better. Yeah, big motivator for me, for sure.
And I've heard different things about that. Like, if there's group prayer going on or meditation, then it actually can bring down the crime rate in a whole area.
Oh, there's some crazy studies about that.
Stuff like that. It's like we actually have control over the crime rate by group prayer and group meditation things. I'm like, that's some stuff.
I know, it is crazy.
We don't realize or know about.
Yeah. And yet, so to take one step back from people who are like, oh, come on, let's take one step back from that idea and think about the last place that you went that you were thinking, oh my gosh, this place, the vibe here is pretty cool, right? it's true. Like there are things that impact us. There's a town in Colorado that has, as I grew up in Colorado, I go there as often as I can because I love that place. But I love Reno too, but I like to go back and visit Colorado.
Yeah.
There's a town in Colorado where we have the country's only supermax prison, where like they say the worst of the worst. And like there are some incredible people with incredible energy in that place, right? And there are probably 5 or 6 other prisons in that little town. And most of that town is just all centered around, that's their economy. There is supporting these prisons. I can't even go in that. I travel through that town and I'm like, I can't get out of it soon enough. For me, the vibe in that town is just, I do not like it. It's dark, it's whatever. And so it, for me, yeah, the vibe of places is real. And so to your point, yeah, this group meditation, group prayer, things that we can emanate from ourselves, it can make a difference. I believe that for those reasons.
Yeah.
So,
I'll have to go find a study and maybe talk about it sometime. Just like I feel like I've read them, but for sure.
Yeah.
So back on this topic, you've mentioned different things that have helped the nervous system. When you're working with people who have a family member who's incarcerated or who's been accused of something, what's the thing that you have found is maybe one tool that you think is super helpful? Maybe it's not the most helpful for everyone, but one thing you think it would be universally kind of helpful to share.
Yeah. And this is one that takes a little more effort. And so sometimes it's difficult for me to share maybe on a podcast, but I'm going to do it anyway. Here we are. But truly this element that we've talked about, a couple of times here of, an outside circumstance that you have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
We really, when a loved one's incarcerated, we have no control over that, right? A lot of things that happen to an incarcerated loved one, their family has zero control over whether they get the right food or are treated like a human being or are not beat up, right? And so for me with something like that is just really radical acceptance of the situation. Here we are. My loved one who I raised and who I love so much is in this terrible place, and I'm not going to change it. I cannot change it. I have no control. And so what can I do? Okay, I can just work on, my own nervous system. I can work on showing up for them and being there for them and advocating for them. Okay, so that kind of mind framing that, focusing on what you can control and accepting what you can't control, letting go. There's that phrase, let go, let God, right? Okay, I can't change these things, and so I'm going to focus on what I can.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that can be applied to so many situations,
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So we are going to talk a little bit about your book.
Okay. Yeah.
So this came, I like this book. I started reading through it, but it's mostly a workbook.
Yes.
So, and I'm going to show you guys. So it's, let me see. So you have pages that are daily. Can you guys see?
Calendar pages. Yeah.
And then you go through that, and then you have these weekly debriefs. Mm-hmm. This is kind of built into a month, right? So you and then a month, and then at the month there's another chapter. Yeah. So this is really kind of meant to be the kind of the help along the way for people who are dealing with different things. Tell us about the book.
Yeah, I wrote that book. It's what I wished I had when I was going through a really difficult time in my life. And I couldn't find anything like it. It just didn't exist. So I'm going to create it. So that was kind of the birthplace of that. I have a lot of DBT exercises in that book, but what I wanted to have was, I just
want to remind people what DBT is.
Dialectical Behavioral Therapy. Yeah. Say a branch of cognitive behavioral therapy with a heavy dose of mindfulness. Yeah.
Okay.
And so there are a lot of different exercises in there that those who may have, practiced some CBT with their therapist might recognize. Okay. But what I did was I divided those. It's a 90-day guidebook. So there's 3 different sections in there, each a month worth of calendar pages long. And each section has a little quiz at the beginning to determine, is this a section that I maybe should start with? And so section 1 is for those who are real, like you're having trouble sleeping, you are getting triggered in, out and about in town all the time. Maybe your relationships are struggling because your nervous system is so out of control, right? And so there's a lot of nervous system regulation exercises in that first section. So the second section is for those who, okay, I'm doing okay, but boy, I'm right on the edge and I still need to maintain a little bit. There's some additional, maybe step 2 nervous system regulation things there. Mm-hmm. And the third section is for those who, okay, I think I've come through this maybe traumatic event here, but what does my new life look like now, right? My life has just been turned upside down. And so there's some rebuilding, there's some dreaming, there's some maybe, let's evaluate what our values are at this point, those kinds of exercises in that third section. And, you may need to repeat one of those sections once or twice or 3 times, and that's completely okay too. But that's kind of how I organized that book, because that's what I thought, man, that I wish I would have had something like that when my life was upside down. So,
yeah. And you came to all of this because of your personal experience.
Yeah. There's kind of an interesting story, actually. I'll tell you just what catapulted me into creating the book, because my therapist, who I found, who I dearly love, I was so grateful for her. I'm a huge advocate for therapy or coaching, whatever works best for you, right? For me, my husband very gently guided me into some therapy during that time, because I really, really needed some help. And during one of our last kind of regular sessions together, she just said to me, she said, Jolyn, I can't wait to read your book. And I went, what do you mean? I'm not going to write a book. But she knew. And so she just dropped the seed there. And I mentioned her in that book in the beginning, talking about it. But yeah.
What a beautiful example of helping each other through, and then lifting each other up so we can help other people through.
Wow.
And that's just like, what a life-giving statement that was,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's great. So I know we're probably about at time where people are, we've been at this for a little bit, but tell them, when should they get your book? Should they just get it? At what point should they just go to, it's on Amazon and stuff, or where can they get the book at?
Yeah, so the book is available on Amazon. Every person that comes to me for help working with trauma, also, I will send them with a little note in the book, a personalized copy for them. But you can get it on Amazon. And, I named the book Trauma Recovery. And I rethink that name probably every other day, because I will tell you the exercises in that book, and I open it up with the fact that with the skills that I learned, during one of the worst times of my life, I was able to avoid being traumatized by other difficult experiences in my life. So any person who's curious about nervous system regulation and surviving even difficult times, really, really difficult times, those exercises would be beneficial for them. So I don't know if there's a person in our society that wouldn't be helpful for.
Right. And if you're not going through it yourself, you almost certainly have someone close to you who is going through it. And so knowing a few of these things that, is not going to hurt, probably.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So how can people work with you? How does that process work?
Yeah. So on my website, my business is named Grapevine Inner Wellness. And the website is the same, grapevineinnerwellness.com. There's an opportunity on there to schedule just a call with me, a Zoom call, where we can see each other and see if we, fit together. I think it's really, really important to have a good connection with the person that you're going to be opening up with and trusting to help you with, your nervous system and the difficult things you're going through. And so I never charge for those. Schedule something with me first. I think that that's a good first step to do. And then from there, we determine together what a good plan for working together would be, what that would look like, length of time we might spend together, and that kind of thing. So I typically don't need to work with people for long periods of time because I can teach some skills that are really helpful in a relatively short amount of time. It's not like 10 years of therapy. So
yeah, that's great. That's really good to know. I'm sure some people are wondering how long is this going to take and how much is it going to be?
Yeah.
So it just sounds like you can teach them some really, as we've seen here, some practical things that will probably help them and get them to the next step.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we don't have to dig into past, like that's the other thing that I love about being a coach and not a therapist is that I don't have to do that. We don't have to spend, 8 or 10 sessions just getting to know, so I can know your whole life history. It's what's going on in your nervous system. What skills can we build to help with that? So.
Yeah, I love that too. So that's a really great thing. Mm-hmm. And then you have a podcast that you've been doing, and now we're getting it pushed out to the masses. So
that's right. I'm so grateful for that. I love this. So the Grapevine Wellness Show really does highlight those really in the Reno, Tahoe area that are helping our community. And, I'll be teaching some skills of my own too, taking over some of those episodes myself eventually. But right now I love just highlighting this amazing community that we have in Reno of people that are helping each other. So
yeah, there's a lot of that goes on here. And I've lived in several different places. So I do feel like there's, or maybe I just landed in it, but it feels like there's a very strong community of people trying to help people. So
yeah, it's great.
In different ways, yeah. So well, Jolyn, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you. So
yeah, I appreciate you too, Mary. Thank you. Thank you for bringing me on here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right. We'll see you all next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining us for this great conversation with Jolyn Armstrong with Grapevine Inner Wellness. Make sure to check out her socials and come back next week for part 1 with Dr. Davina Longshore with the Cummings Foundation for Behavioral Health. See you next week.